Recap of 1 Corinthians. First thing is, Paul went to Corinth in 50 AD. He stayed for 18 months, and then he left and went elsewhere to tell people about Jesus. In the next 4, 5, maybe 6 years, he wrote this letter that we still have today. There is numerous ancient copies of it, lots of them. And scholars have pieced it together, so if you want to look at those ancient documents, you can. They're available online, which is pretty cool. You can actually see the actual documents. So that's pretty neat. But he's writing to the Christians. He's not writing to the general populace. He's not writing to low-life dirtbags. He's writing to Christians. All right? He's not writing to people who worship Athena or any of the other gods that were worshipped in the polytheistic atmosphere that was in Corinth. He's writing to Christians. Most of them are new Christians within 4 to 5 years of becoming Christians. And in chapter 13, he gives a very cool definition of love, which last week we covered. So just to recap, his definition of love does not include anything physical, which we covered last week. Yeah. So according to Paul, love does not include sex. Love does not include kissing or hugging. Love does not include any of that stuff. Love doesn't include, which is actually on this board over here, a whole bunch of things.
Money.
Words of angels, money, gifts of prophecy, knowing all mysteries, being able to move mountains. He says it's all like somebody playing the drums who doesn't know what they're doing, just banging all over the place. Words of angels. You know, flowery talk, warm fuzzies, talking sweet, whispering sweet nothings. Yeah, words of angels.
I'm so confused.
Okay. So, he points that out that none of that is love. You can have all of those things and still not have love, and it's completely pointless, worthless, meaningless, and you're like somebody who doesn't know how to play the drums just banging away. Now, have you ever heard somebody just sit down behind the drum set and just start and not have a clue what they're doing? Yeah, it's terrible. Right? So then he gives this definition of love, which Zach last week wrote up here, and what the characteristics of love are. They're patient, kind, behaving, respectful, righteous, put others before themselves, hope all things, believe all things. It's everlasting, never fails. That's starting in the 4th verse of chapter 13, going towards the end of the verse. And tonight we are going to pick up where we left off last week with the last verse in 13. So, the last verse in 13 says, "And now abide faith, hope, and love, these three, but the greatest is love." So, Tori, go ahead and start reading nice and loud for everybody. First verse of 14.
Follow after charity and desire spiritual gifts, but rather that ye may prophesy. For those for he that speaketh in a different version.
Okay.
Oh, I should read reading from.
I'm reading the one that's easier.
Do you want to read from that version?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead.
And an unknown tongue speaketh not unto men, but unto God, for no man should understand him how by within the spirit he speaketh mysteries. But he that prophesies speaketh unto men to edification
Edification.
and
Exhortation.
and comfort.
All right, hold on. What do you know what those two words mean? Because I don't know about you, but I don't generally use edification and exhortation in everyday talk.
I've
So-
never heard of them.
Exactly. So you don't know what they mean, huh?
Comfort. I don't know.
Comfort's pretty easy. You know what comfort means? Feel good, right? So edification means to build somebody up or to boost them, to bring them to another level. And exhortation is kind of the same way. One is, but they're slightly different. But they both basically mean build them up, boost their confidence, make them better than they were. Okay? All right. So, what's the general theme here of this chapter? Summed up in one word.
Carrie.
Kinda. What does he say? Okay, so prophesying. How do you prophesy? What do you do when you prophesy?
You see the future technically?
You speak, right?
Yeah.
All right. What else does he say there? 'Cause I'm erasing this for tonight.
For no one understands him, however, the Spirit he speaks mysterious.
So more speaking, right? Okay.
Also,
So,
it's about talking about stuff.
so what's chapter 14's main theme?
Talking about stuff.
Talking, right? Talking. Well, I wasn't meaning it to be hard. It's talking. He's talking, right? So, we talked about love last week and the real definition of love. All right. This week, Paul talks about speaking, right? There. Oh yeah, that looks much better. Okay, so I heard a study. I don't know how true it is, but it said that men speak 1,000 words a day, but women speak 10,000 words.
That is true.
I think
Except for him.
I think that might be hyperbole, but
My mom
Speaking.
talks for hours.
right?
Probably.
Speaking. So Paul talks about speaking, and he's referring to two different types of speaking. One is from PvP, right? Person to person, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like you and I are talking right now, right?
Yeah.
Paul talks about that. He says, if we're talking from person to person, we got to have a certain way we communicate. If I'm speaking French and you're speaking English, how well is that going to work?
No.
Not very well, right? They're both Latin languages, but that doesn't work very well, right? No habla español, señor?
No bonjour.
Sprechen de Deutsch?
Just more.
Nine?
Oh, I need to know. Yeah, I know that.
Sprechen de Deutsch? Is,
No.
do you speak German?
I know a little bit of that. I know a little bit of Russian, a little bit of French, and
See, but
not much.
But if you and I are talking, get our little stick people over here, and our bubbles, okay,
Yeah, I'm taller.
and we're both talking the same language, we can understand each other pretty well, right?
Yeah.
But what if Tori doesn't speak English? We're both talking English, and she walks in, but she doesn't. But she doesn't know English. Let's say she knows Cantonese, which has nothing to do with English, right? That would be over in China. Okay? That is not Chinese. All right? Cantonese. How well is it going to be for her to walk in and understand what we're saying?
Very hard.
She's probably going to have a bunch of question marks going through her head, right?
Uh-huh.
There's an old saying, boy, that sounds like Greek to me, right? Well, I used to know a guy who actually spoke Greek, and he would say, well, that sounds like Russian to me, because he didn't know Russian. Okay, but he did know Greek, right? So Paul is saying, if we don't use the same language, we're not going to be able to understand each other, right? He also says that there's this thing called a spiritual language. So that's just us, right? So he talks about this thing called a spiritual language. And he used the term tongues. Okay? Now, what do you think he's talking about there? Okay.
Speaking a different language.
Who understands that?
Yourself.
If I start speaking in a spiritual language known as tongues, can you understand?
No.
Why?
Because you don't know that language.
Because you don't know that language, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So who does know that language?
You,
Okay, who else?
God.
God, right? This is the language of God.
So spiritual tongues is the language of God.
It's the language of God.
Yeah.
And Paul was telling these Corinthians, by the way, remember Corinth? If it went by land, it went through Corinth, right? If it went by sea, it went through Corinth. What?
I don't do priests like shoot, I forgot. Exorcists use Latin in exorcism.
I have no idea, I'm not Catholic.
Okay.
That's a good
Oh,
question
it's a
though.
Catholic thing?
Yeah, exorcism is a Catholic thing,
Oh.
and I'm not Catholic. But that's a good question, so I will look that up and give you an answer next week. How's that?
Okay.
We don't forget.
It wouldn't surprise me if they use Latin because they use Latin a lot. So, all right, so back to Paul. In Corinth, remember we have the Peloponnese, which is Sparta in the lower part of Greece.
Oh no.
We have Athens in the upper part of Greece, and Corinth is in the middle. Corinth is the center of trade. Okay.
Like I know back in the day that you corn kind of mega this. I think.
Yes. So, Corinth has numerous languages. One of them is Greek, called High Greek. High Greek is the language of the aristocrats, the wealthy. Okay. And many of the historians and scholars around Corinth wrote in High Greek. Okay? Paul did not. All of the record we have of Paul is that he wrote in the common language known as Common Greek, which everybody spoke, not just high society.
High Greek, like a whole different language.
They were very similar languages, but it would be like speaking Irish English versus speaking
American English.
Southern American English.
Ah.
Okay? They're both English, but
So they can technically kind of understand them now.
you can understand it, but if you're in Ireland and somebody says, I'm going to the flat, it's going to mean something very differently than, say, if you're in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what a flat is in Ireland?
No, I know the flight is down in America.
Yeah, it's like a plane, right? It's just a flat piece of land. Well, in Ireland, it's your apartment.
Oh.
I'm going to the flat. I'm going to my apartment.
So weird.
Yeah. So they're both English, but they're different, right?
Yeah.
Also in Corinth, there was Latin being written and spoken. That was the legal language.
I've heard Latin is a really holy language.
Yeah, for Rome. Okay. So any correspondence to and from Rome or government officials was Latin. And there was a whole bunch of other languages. Aramaic, there was Eastern languages like from India, because Corinth was such a epicenter, kind of like New York City, right?
Mm.
Different areas of the city spoke different languages.
The reason I thought about that is because I watched The Exorcist, and it seemed like I know he was using Latin. I'm like, is that true?
See, I don't know. I'm not Catholic, so but I'll look that up.
That'd be cool to know.
Yeah. So Paul is talking about love in chapter 13, and then he shifts into talking about languages. And he says, you know, if two of you are talking and you both share the same language, it's easy to communicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you get a third person who doesn't know what you're talking about, doesn't know the language, it's a problem. And I see this at work. When I'm a paramedic, and when several of us get together for a conference or something, we have a very distinctive language that we use. Different jargon, okay? Like beating on the chest refers to CPR. Lighting someone up refers to a cardiac, to defibrillator or
So
cardiologist.
it's slang.
Yeah, we have our own slang, right? My brother, he is an IT professional, and he does IT work. And I heard him on the phone, overheard him on the phone talking to one of his colleagues, and I had no clue what he was talking about. I know it's English, but I have no idea what, because I'm not an IT guy. Okay?
I actually burned myself yesterday. Don't do that. It was an
Okay.
accident. It was an accident. Like I was trying to light these lighters, I was lighting up fireworks, and it was like so fast, it burned, and I dropped. I'm like, oh shoot, and my hand was like on fire. I'm like, oh shoot. So I run into the house and put it under cold water. I'm like, oh, that hurt. And I woke up today, it was like fine. Like, okay, that's kind of weird, but I mean, I'm not complaining. 'Cause the whole day it hurt. Thankfully, during the evening, not in the morning. I don't think I ever made it.
Okay, so Paul is talking to a group of elected individuals. They all speak various languages, right? And there's confusion. He talks about that previously in his letter about the confusion going on. Well, this is coming back to that. Okay? And he also says if you're talking and your audience doesn't know what you're talking about, it's like talking to thin air. Or today we might say it's talking to a brick wall, right? You ever heard that?
Yeah.
You're just talking to a brick wall? Well, that's either the person you're talking to isn't listening or they have no idea what you're saying, right? Right?
It's not that, it's just kids call me a brick wall.
Okay. But if we fast forward through here, he says, brethren, 20th verse here, brethren, do not be children in understanding, however, in malice be babes, but in understanding be mature. In the law it is written, with men of other tongues and other lips I will speak to this people, and yet for all that they will not hear me, says the Lord. By the way, that is a reference to another part of the Bible, okay? And what he's saying is God's going to talk to people, all right? But he's not going to talk to them in a language they understand because they quit listening.
I lost you around here.
Okay? So, I just read from here.
Oh, you're really good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We skipped down. That's all right, though. Okay?
At least you're trying to do something.
Exactly. So, why do you think it's important if we speak a common language?
So we need to understand it.
So we can understand each
Say
other.
like an emergency or something gets shot, if you don't understand it, you're not gonna know what happened.
Exactly. So, I'm going to tell a little anecdotal story here about me. When I was younger, I was in a hurry to get out of high school, so I left after 3 years. I graduated as a junior. I joined the Army, and I headed south. Okay, I moved to the southern part of New Mexico, in a part called Roswell,
Mexico?
New Mexico.
Oh, New Mexico. Like, you went to
It was
Mexico.
still in the U.S., barely, but still there. Okay, and down there they have two official languages, English and Spanish. And they also have a slang language, commonly referred to as Spanglish, which is a mixing of the two languages.
That's kind of weird.
And when I moved down there, I had taken some Spanish in high school, but I took Spain Spanish, proper Spanish from Spain, which is very different than southern New Mexico. Kind of like Ireland, English in Ireland versus Alabama, for example.
I actually intend on doing the Army to get paid for my college tuition,
Yeah.
and then using that info to get into the state police.
Well, there you go.
Cause I got my whole life planned already.
So while I was down there, the first thing that happened is I flew into Albuquerque, which is in the northwestern part of the state.
You need to drive the rest of the way.
And well, I flew into Albuquerque. I get there, and there's supposed to be a shuttle waiting for me to take me to the school where I'm going to be living for the next year.
The school.
Yeah, it was a military school called New Mexico Military Institute.
That was
And this guy, he stood about this tall. He was really dark complected.
I thought it was you.
I'm this height. I was full grown, 17. Okay. He was dark complected, brown, and he's got a sign. That's all he's got. Is he just has a sign. Okay. A sign. It's about this big. Okay. And he's standing there. When I get off the plane, I have to go through security and get there. And this is before the TSA. Okay, so before TSA, you can go right up to the terminal, right up to the plane, like nothing. So he's standing there as I'm getting off the plane in the concourse, and he's got a sign this big. And all it says on there is Cadet Holt. That's it. Because I didn't have a rank, I was a cadet, okay? So no private or sergeant, because I was just starting, okay? Cadet Holt, that's all it had on it. That's it. Okay? Now, I knew there was somebody going to be waiting there for me for a shuttle to drive me the other 3 hours. Hold on, let me tell my story. 3 hours to Roswell, where I was going to be living, right? But I didn't know who it was. I didn't know who was meeting me. I just knew someone was. And I didn't know if they spoke English. I didn't know if they spoke Spanish. I didn't know if they spoke some other language. I didn't know anything about them other than they're going to have a sign with your name on it, and you're going to ride with them for the next 3 hours to where you're going. Okay?
And it was the wrong person.
Hold on. So I walk off. I'm just moseying around. I'm like, I need to go get my luggage. Not paying any attention. I walk right by the guy.
Oh.
He has no clue who I am either, by the way, because he's never met me before. He doesn't have a picture of me. All he has is a name, right? That's it. Just a name. And I walk right by him. Don't even like give him a second glance. Little tiny sign, right? And I walk it, and I go down to my baggage claim. I get my bag, and I'm looking around. I'm like, there's supposed to be somebody here waiting for me. I don't know who. And I'm at baggage claim. I finally go sit down at a bench, and I'm looking around. I'm not seeing anybody. Right? Pretty soon, all of the bags get claimed. Everybody who was on the plane I just got off of have left. They've all gotten their luggage and left. And it's just me in the entire baggage claim, sitting on a bench, waiting for somebody to pick me up, and I'm just waiting. And I'm like, what in the world? I don't have a phone number, I don't have a cell phone because it's before that time, okay? I have nothing, it's just me and my bag, okay? So, what is one major problem with this story?
You walk past people and not move their time.
You didn't understand.
Neither one of us knew each other, right?
That would be helpful to know who he was.
Neither one of us, right? Neither one of us spoke the same language. Neither one of us knew each other
Did
existed.
you know the same language?
Okay, so finally I get up and I go over to the information desk. And a little lady there, she goes, oh, hey, can I help you? And I went, yes. And she goes, whoa, okay. And then she started typing on her computer. And I went, excuse me, I'm waiting for someone. She looked up and she goes, Espanol? Spanish? Hablo español, señor. Well, I knew that meant, do you speak Spanish, sir? Okay, because of high school, right? So I answered, I said, un poco, un poquito, un poquito, which is a little in Spain. Guess what it means in Mexico? Nothing. It means nothing, it's poco. Okay, so you can see where this story is going, right? This lady at the counter does not speak any English whatsoever. I'm in the United States. I'm in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, which is in the northern west part of the state, but she does not speak English. Okay? While we're having this dialogue back and forth trying to figure out what each other's saying, another lady walks in and she goes, excuse me, sir, she doesn't speak English. Do you speak Spanish? I said, not really. I took 3 years in high school and can't speak a lick of it. And she goes, oh, well, I'll help you. What can I help you with? Now, why did the first lady and I not be able to help each other out?
Because you didn't understand Spanish, good to know.
Neither one, right?
Yeah.
She didn't understand me and I didn't understand her. And Paul was telling these Christians, it starts with a language. And if we're not speaking the same language, we're not going to understand each other. And if we can't understand each other, it's just going to breed confusion, all kinds of question marks, right?
Just like how
Well, the story gets better because I still got 3 hours to go, right? Okay? So I go, And I walk over and I tell her I'm waiting for a guy. He's supposed to have a shuttle for me to head to New Mexico Military Institute. I'm going to spend the next year with the Army. And she goes, oh, okay. She goes, well, most shuttle drivers will have a little paper sign. Little paper sign. And she goes, about this big. When you get off the plane. Well, baggage claim is on the other side of the airport from where I got off the plane.
You walked right by him all the other time.
Okay, and the Albuquerque airport is a pretty large airport. We're about a mile walk from each other.
Yeah, one airport, it's like a couple, like 2 or 3.
Yeah, it's pretty far. And she goes, he'll have a little sign with your name on it. And where your final destination is, New Mexico Military Institute. I said, oh, back where I got off the plane? And she goes, yeah, they meet you where you get off the plane. I'm like, oh, that's not good. She goes, why? Where was your flight? And I told her, and she goes, oh, that's on the complete opposite side of the airport. You're like a 10-minute walk from here. She goes, you better hope he didn't forget about you and leave. So I book it back through the airport, all the way back to that gate, just as fast as I can possibly get there, because he's my only ride, right? And when I get there, as I'm running, I see this little short guy. Okay? Alright, little short guy. He's got a nice button-up shirt on. He's got a piece of paper in his hand right here. And he's walking past me. And I catch 3 letters on that piece of paper. I catch O-L-T. Holt.
It's not 3 letters.
O-L-T is 3 letters.
Oh.
I catch O-L, as I'm running past him, I catch that because of how he's holding it. Okay? O-L-T. And I'm like, whoa! You're my guy. Right? And I stop. And I turn around and go, hey, 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 hey. And he stops and he looks at me and I said, hey, are you waiting for Timothy Holt? And he looks at his card and goes, looking for this guy. That's all he says, looking for this guy. I'm like, yeah, that's me. He goes, no. I said, yeah, I'm Cadet Holt. He goes, no, too tall.
Oh!
I'm like, what? And that's almost all the English he spoke.
Apparently you're too tall.
Okay? Oh, I'm like, what do you mean too tall, man? I'm 5'7", I ain't tall. Right? And he goes, too tall. No. And I pulled out my ID and he goes, tall guy, too tall. I'm your guy. And he did not believe me at first, and then finally I was able to convince him. Okay? However, the entire 3-hour drive to Roswell, him and I were talking, trying to have a conversation. He was speaking Spanish and Spanglish, that's that mixing local language, right? And I was having such a hard time understanding him. But by the end of the 3 hours, we understood each other pretty well. Because it was just the 2 of us in a van for 3 hours. Okay? Come to find out, he was told that instead of somebody about 5'7", he was told that it'd be someone about 5 foot.
Oh my goodness.
Okay?
Too tall.
Too tall. So that's why he didn't even notice me when I walked by, because I'm too tall, right? Okay?
So then how did they not know how tall you were?
Well, they did. It was a typo on his paper.
Oh.
He had a description of what I would look like. And had me too tall. He also said I was too big. I wasn't big enough. I apparently was a short, fat guy.
Oh,
they added some weight to my stature, yes. At the time I weighed about 125 pounds, and they had me listed at 225. So 225 and 5 foot tall is very different than 5'7" and 125, right?
Oh my goodness.
So language is very, very important, right? So,
Oh, shoot. Oh wait, okay.
huh.
I forgot it.
All right, well, while you think about it, I'm going to point out another thing. When I was in school, there was this there's this computer system that came out. You may have heard of it, okay? And I remember my parents bought their first computer. First one, okay? It was made by Apple. And someone asked them, hey, did you get the new Windows? And my parents said, yeah, we got new vinyl ones in our house. Which is true, they did. They had just replaced all the windows in our house with vinyl windows. Hold on. She already knows where I'm going with this. Okay? Yeah, we just got new windows. The whole house. And the person at, I think it was Best Buy, it was one of those types of stores, looked at him like, we don't sell that here. What do you mean you just got a whole house full of windows, right? Well, it's because the guy at the store was talking about Windows operating system on their computer, which Apple does not use. They use Mac OS.
Yep.
Okay?
I've heard of Windows Store name.
All right. And my parents didn't know that, and they were thinking Windows as in, what you put in a wall in a house. Right? But they're both Windows. Okay? Well, Paul is telling them that if they pray, but they don't know what they're praying about, they're just babbling, that's not good, right? Because there's no communication there. See?
Wait, at that time, what was the Bible's written language at that time?
So 1 Corinthians was written in Greek, common Greek. Okay? But Paul is telling them,
Those two?
so
What's the flavor?
there's wavy original and original.
Original. There's no better. The regular. Classic. Classic's the best.
You want that?
I like it.
So we have God, right? And we already covered communication this way, right? If you and your buddy are talking the same language, there's communication, there's no confusion, right? Now Paul relates it this way.
We are going to understand spiritual about tongues and language.
And he says, if you're praying and you're babbling, you're just babbling and not making any sense whatsoever, then there is no communication. He says prayer is a two-way street. Okay? Prayer is both us talking to God, but it's also God talking to us. Okay? And you good?
That's in trouble.
Okay. Because I can ask Tori to help you.
Got it.
All right. So Paul is saying if this guy is talking to God, God is not going to tell him something different than this one. Okay? All right? Right? Because he's one God. One message, one plan. So, just as important as this communication is, so is this communication. And God has his own language. Paul calls it tongues. Okay? So, if we want communication among Christians, which Paul is talking to, we all have to be using the same language. And Paul's not talking about Greek or Latin or English, right? Right? He's saying we all have to use the same language, God's language, when we pray. When we're seeking God's face, when we're looking for direction, when we come together, we all have to have the same focus. And that's on God. And that language is from God. So, if you want to understand what God's language is and how to understand what he's saying, you have to, what?
Understand the language.
Spend time with God, right? Just like, in order for me to understand what that driver was talking about, I had to spend time with him, right? Same thing. That's what Paul is talking about. So, find out where the part is. So here we go. 13. We'll go to 29. All right. So verse 29. Let 2 or 3 prophets speak, and let the others judge. But if anything is revealed to another who sits by, let the first keep silent. Okay? He's talking about when we're together. How would it go if we were in the sanctuary with everybody else and everybody just started talking all at once?
It would get loud.
And confusing, right? So that's what he's talking about here. He's saying, hey, if you got something to say, that's fine. But if somebody else is already talking, let them talk. Wait your turn, right? For you can all prophesy one by one, that all may learn and may be encouraged. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets, for God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all the churches of all the saints. Okay? Now the next section we're not going to spend a lot of time on, mainly because, well, some people, we'll do it. Why not? Why not? All right, 34. Okay, verse 34 says, let your women keep silent in the churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but they are to be submissive, as the law also says. Okay, so he spends a couple of verses here on basically telling women to be quiet. Okay? So there's a couple of ways to interpret this. One of them is, what do you think one way to read that is, Adam?
We didn't even have enough break back then.
Okay, all right. So universal, all women should be quiet, right?
I do not know the answer to that.
Good answer. Good answer. So there's basically 3 ways to interpret what Paul is writing here. And depending on some preconceived notions, I think is how you would perceive it. First one is all women.
Cameron's for woman, right?
Quiet, right?
Yeah.
Right? Now, I can tell you right now that Tori is not quiet.
Now women have like more power than even men.
So, I think in order for us to find out exactly what Paul's talking about here, we have to go back to who he's writing. Who is he writing to? Where?
One.
When? Ancient, right?
Yeah.
Ancient Corinth, right? Well, in ancient Corinth, guess who had no rights in public?
Women.
Women. In ancient Corinth, women had no property rights. They had no say in government. They had no say in local politics. They were basically treated as a little more than a slave. And I'm not talking about Christians. I mean in the entire city.
Because women are stupid.
Okay? Now, so Paul is talking to a group of Christians in a city that treats women like they're dirt. Right? That's horrible, right? So I don't think Paul is saying all women everywhere, right? Probably not. Especially since one lady that Paul worked with a lot, Aquila. Okay, Aquila he met in Corinth, and she becomes a standout in the Christian world over the next couple of years. Teaching, preaching, she pastors a church, so he's probably not talking about all women, right? If we back up a few chapters, he talks about very specific women causing
He's talking about
problems.
prostitutes like that doing it, like that.
Okay, so
What?
he's probably not
People
talking
that
about.
don't serve God. Boom.
He's probably not talking about them because he's writing to Christians. So probably not.
All right.
not non-Christian women, right?
Okay, hold on.
So it's probably not all women everywhere, because that would be very inconsistent if one of his apprentices is a lady who becomes a rock star, right? Okay, probably not non-Christian women, because, well, he's writing to Christians.
Christian women.
Huh?
Christian women.
Yeah, but, so, let's make 4 here then. 3 and 4. So we've got just Christian women.
But Christians, non-Christian women.
All right.
That was really thinking about it.
And then we have a specific, if I can spell specific, group of women, right? Right? Now, I'm going to say it's probably not just Christian women. The reason is because he's not writing to Christians in Ephesus, right? Because we have a letter to Ephesus. He's not writing to Christians in Rome. He's writing to Christians in Corinth. So most likely he's talking about a very specific group of women, right? And I think he's talking about the same group of women he referenced a few chapters ago, where he said, hey, these women are causing major problems in your church, and they need to sit down and shut up.
Karens.
Yes.
No, the boomers.
Those could be guys. So, I think what Paul is talking about here isn't women at large, or even just Christian women. I think he's talking about
The annoying one.
that specific group of women that were causing major problems in the church. What do you think?
Yeah.
Because he says, all those women need to sit down and be quiet.
Why?
Because they're causing problems.
Go to the corner.
Okay, that's my interpretation. You can come to your own. Okay?
I would.
But we're going to end tonight with verse 40, which is the last there. It says, let all things be done decently and in order. Because no matter if Paul was talking about all women or some women or whatever, it all sums up with that line right there. In all order, right? Decently. If you're treating somebody like dirt, does it matter what you're saying?
No.
No, they're probably not going to listen to you anyway, right? Right? So, God, you're awesome. Please help us to understand each other as well as you. And it takes all kinds of people to win all kinds of people to you, because you're awesome. And thank you for these ancient texts and what they mean for us today. Some of it might have nothing to do with us, and others of it might be, oh, well, it seems like people are still stupid, myself included. You're awesome, God. Thank you for all your wisdom. Amen. With that, before we leave, make sure you guys clean up.